All right, so this is the review for the Unit 3 test over US and Canada. I have the test right here, so I'll be looking over it and hitting on the main ideas that you need to know for the test. All right, so, and which means I have to read through it a little bit as I go through it. All right, so a couple of things that we talked about. Obviously, government, you should know we're a representative democracy, which means we elect representatives to represent us in Congress. Make sure you can compare that to the Canadian system as well, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. And also the factors to help make us a great economic power, which we talked about, having access to a lot of natural resources. Of course, our location in the world, being able to trade with everyone. A strong political system that's a stable political system. We also talked about how you need a skilled labor force in order to get access to raw materials and things like that, and of course work in different industries. All right, and you need to know some physical geography as well, like mountain ranges and stuff like that. So you should know where the Appalachians are, which is, of course, on the east side of the United States. The Rocky Mountains, which are on the western side of the U.S. You also need to know the features that we share with Canada. So the Rockies we share with Canada as well. They extend all the way into Canada, and the Great Plains extend from here all the way into central Canada as well. Make sure you remember your different economic levels of activity: primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, and be able to give examples of those. And then, of course, most of our farming occurs mainly here in the plains. We have rich, fertile soils in this region. You should know what push and pull factors are. You should know what some of the main pull factors are for the U.S., such as stable government, it's generally safe, better education systems, freedom, things like that. And keep in mind, most people live in flat, fertile areas. That's where you're going to see the highest amount of the population. A little bit from history, we talked about the climate exchange. So just remember what was exchanged during that time. So all the goods that were being passed between the U.S. And other parts of Latin America and Africa and Europe during exploration and the slave trade. Urban sprawl, so remember that's unplanned growth. So areas, it's where growth occurs without any planning whatsoever, and cities just kind of sprawl out everywhere. And it's not managed well. All right, the Parliament in Canada, so remember kind of what that is equivalent to. So that would be equivalent to our Congress. Here in the United States, they have two houses like we do within our Congress. All right, and then relationship between, well, there's a little reading you'll do, a little vignette, so as long as you can read and answer questions, you should be good. Climate in the U.S. and Canada varies greatly, so it can be very hot and humid, like in Florida, to incredibly frigid temperatures up in Canada. So we pretty much have every climate you can imagine in North America. You need to know why. We know the Rocky Mountains are older than the Appalachians. We talked about that in physical geography. So basically, the Rocky Mountains, they're shorter, they're more rounded. You can tell there's been more erosion on those mountains compared to the Rockies. So the Rockies are a newer mountain range. Again, you need to be able to look at maps and answer questions based on maps. You should be good there. And again, remember the different terms for our economic system. So we have a market economy, also known as a free enterprise or capitalist. It's all the same thing. Remember how we talked about Canada being a cultural mosaic, so how the cultures there don't really meld together. They live more separate from each other compared to here in the U.S. We're more of a, historically at least, have been more of a melting pot. Again, you'll have some maps, some charts to read. That's pretty easy. We talked about what physical features we share with Canada. Again, natural resources playing a key role in the development of our economy. Reasons why U.S. and Canada get along well. We have a similar economic system, similar history. We're both part of the British Empire at one point. Obviously, like I said, geographically, we're close to each other, share natural resources and stuff like that. And of course, we border each other. Again, know how to read maps and charts. There's several on this test. Stuff from Unit 1 to remember, you still need to remember what GPS is, GIS, things like that. Some questions on that. And then keep in mind, or remember with the French Canadians, we talked about this some. So French Canadians mainly live in Quebec. and they're fiercely independent. So they actually voted for independence back in the 1990s and only lost by 1%. So they still see themselves as distinct and different from the rest of the Canadians for the most part. Again, know how to read a population pyramid, more maps and charts. That's all pretty easy stuff. All right, so the Continental Divide, going back to physical geography, remember the Continental Divide is the highest point in the Rocky Mountains, and that's what divides where water flow goes. So if you're on the west side of the divide, all the water goes to the Pacific Ocean. If you're on the east side of the divide, all the water either goes to the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico. You should also know where our major cities are located and what physical features are around them. So, for example, New Orleans is on the Gulf of Mexico. Chicago is around the Great Lakes. New York City, of course, right there on the Atlantic Ocean. And then LA, obviously, is next to the Pacific Ocean. All right, and then you need to remember with 9/11, we created the Office of Homeland Security after that to help protect our borders and watch us, at the airports, ports, and stuff like that, and take care of security. Again, you should know what democracy is and characteristics of democracy. So just remember, again, democracy gives power to the people and the people to choose their government and influence it. NAFTA, we talked about NAFTA some. Remember, that's the North American Free Trade Agreement. The main goal of NAFTA, which is between U.S., Canada, and Mexico, main goal of NAFTA is to reduce tariffs, decrease tariffs to increase trade is the goal. All right, and then we talked about the melting pot. So again, the melting pot theory is the idea that immigrants come into the U.S. and then assimilate into one basically American culture for the most part. You need to know what a trade deficit is. So a trade deficit is when we buy more things than we sell. So you're losing money that way. So just think of it this way: if you and your friend were buying and selling from each other, and you bought more goods from them than they bought from you, you're losing money. So that's what a trade deficit is. It's when you're buying more from your friend than what you're selling. Therefore, you're losing money. All right, another political cartoon. It's pretty straightforward though. Keep in mind also, and I mentioned this as well, that since the 1960s, 1970s, we've seen a big shift economically as far as where people work. We don't really see manufacturing jobs that much anymore. So they shifted from manufacturing from, like the secondary level up to the tertiary level. We see more people in the service industry currently. You should also know, as far as cities, you should know, San Diego, San Francisco, Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, all of those are on the West Coast. And they're major cities mainly because of trade with Asian countries across the Pacific Ocean. Also remember how humans first got into North America. When I say first got in, I'm talking thousands of years ago. So people crossed Beringia, the ice bridge that connected Asia over to North America. So they came across that and over time spread out. And then, and again, comparing back to Canada again. So, we're a much larger country than Canada in population. They're much larger than us as far as physical size. We're more powerful than they are. But the main thing we have in common is we both have multi-ethnic populations. So we don't have just one ethnicity in our country. And that's it for this unit, for this test. Honestly, it should be a pretty easy test overall. There's quite a bit of maps and charts, little readings. As long as you can interpret those correctly, it really shouldn't be that bad. So good luck.